Hey, welcome to worshiptutorials.com. My name is Brian. In this video, we're going to talk about this guitar and what you can get for an acoustic guitar for this one was under $400, shipped to my door with a pickup. This is the Orangewood Brooklyn Live. Before we get started, I'm just going to let you hear what this thing sounds like, and then we'll talk about it. It seems like these days, if you are looking for a really good, really affordable acoustic guitar, the name Orangewood pretty much shows up every time you ask the question. I hang out in a lot of Facebook groups that are dedicated to worship leaders or people who play guitar or instruments in church, and these things get recommended all the time. So I thought, I'm just going to get one and see if the hype is real. This is their grand concert body style. If you were to ask me, I'd say this looks like an OM, but Orangewood calls this grand concert, and they have several guitars that fall in that category, from anywhere from like $200 up to this one was $395 shipped, and then they make all solid construction guitars that cost a little more than that as well. You can get them with, there it is, or without electronics, and different models have different options for those. So anywhere between like under $200 to, you know, closer to $1,000-ish. I'm not exactly sure what their higher end line costs, but they are super affordable. The Brooklyn features a solid spruce top, which is good. They call it layered Palfero, I think that's how you pronounce that, back and sides, which I believe, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm sure someone in the comments will know. I believe that's a rosewood-ish tone wood. And layered just means that it's not solid. So you might see the word composite layered. That means that this is not solid wood. That's one of the first things that you'll see is a non-solid back and sides. Doesn't mean it sounds bad. It just means it might not sound as rich, as three-dimensional as this same guitar would with solid back and sides. But it really does look nice. Some additional features found on this guitar. The neck is mahogany. You can see they basically stained the neck so that it looks pretty much like the back and sides. If you didn't, you know, if you weren't looking close, you might think this is the same wood. If you look really close, you can tell that it's not. Ovenkal. I need to learn how to pronounce these tone woods. I'm used to like rosewood, ebony, that kind of thing for the fretboard. The fretboard looks and feels like an ebony board. I have several acoustic guitars that have ebony fretboards. That's a really high-end appointment that you'll find on an acoustic guitar. And I'd say this is very comparable to that. You could argue that there are tonal characteristics of putting an ebony fretboard in here that you wouldn't get with this particular wood. Whether you'd hear that or not is debatable, but overall it just feels nice. You can see that it's a double bound body, simple binding across the seam here on the back. Really tastefully appointed, if I do say so myself. The rosette or the sound hole has like an abalone inlay. there. I really like these sort of wingtip looking inlays on the fretboard. The headstock, I think they've gone with a really classy looking headstock. And you know, their branding on the headstock looks pretty sharp. I really like these tuner buttons. These are like a matte, I want to say this is probably some kind of a rubber plastic material of some kind, but they feel good and they look nice, matte black. I always think that's a classy look on acoustic guitar. You can see there the hardware is gold on these tuners, and they work really well. They're not brand name that I can tell, but they do the job. This thing is holding tune just fine. They don't specify it on the website, or maybe they did, I just missed it, but the bridge material, I'm gonna guess, is the same as the fretboard, if I were just gonna take a guess. They do tell you though that the nut and the saddle, I gotta get these right. Nut, saddle, there we go. I do know the parts of the guitar are bone, which is really nice. That's again something you'd find on a higher end guitar. And this particular model comes with a Fishman Flex EQ system. So let's talk a bit about playability of this guitar, because I think that that is the Orangewood's strength, is how well this thing plays. And I will say too, I'm a big setup nut. So anytime I get a guitar in, especially electric guitars, I do a complete setup. I know exactly how I like to have a guitar set up, exactly how much neck relief that I like. This is nerdy stuff. Exactly what kind of string action that I want to see on a guitar. And this thing was pretty much perfect right out of the box, which for a $300 guitar, you know, I've received electric guitars that are upwards of a couple $1,000s that weren't set up this well. So Orangewood is doing something right, and if you look at their materials, what they will tell you is the guitars are made overseas. Does this tell me where this guitar was made? Made in China. And then they're shipped to their facilities in California, where they are set up by hand by somebody there at Orangewood, and that shows. I did not have to adjust the neck. Typically, especially because it came from California all the way to North Carolina. So it made the trip across the country, and the neck relief was spot on. String height was great, and in fact, as I was changing strings, the saddle came out. You know, you can just pull these saddles out, and I noticed where they had drawn in pencil, which would tell, what that tells you is they had measured exactly where they needed to shave the saddle to get the appropriate string action on the guitar. All of these things is something that a setup person, a luthier, could do for you on any guitar, but to have that done by somebody who knows what they're doing on a guitar that's this affordable, I think is a really, really nice touch. Orangewood, kudos to you guys. So the setup was great. So the only thing that I did, you know, if you would hit a string and do some vibrato, the frets were a little scratchy, which is something that happens with guitars. So I have some StewMac fret erasers. Not a sponsor, but they work great. And I took the strings off, did a string change, and then I just went and I really polished the tops of the frets so they're nice and smooth. That's something that you can do with every guitar that you have, and it will make it feel like a much more expensive guitar. But even like a lot of times with inexpensive guitars, like the edges of the frets are really sharp. This one, you know, it's a bound fretboard up and down the neck, and it's kind of rolled over. It has that sort of worn in feel. Just plays and feels really, really nice. neck they describe as a medium C. And to me, it feels pretty chunky. It's definitely not a thin neck. And I have I'd say I have normal sized hands. It fits my hand really well. I could see though for a younger guitar player or for a female guitar player with smaller hands, I think these guitars are catering toward beginners, especially because of their price point and the fact that they are really, at least this one is a really nice playing guitar, and that's what you hear across the board about these. The neck might feel a little chunky if you have small hands, but you know, it's comfortable, I'll say that. So this kind of leads me to another point about Orangewood, and that is their sales model. So it's direct sales. One of the reasons why the prices on these are so low compared to other comparable guitars is because there is no like dealer middleman. They are the manufacturer and the dealer. It's kind of a double-edged sword though, because they're able to keep, basically you're getting direct pricing. That's what they would tell you in their marketing material, and that feels about right. Like I think this guitar hits above its price point pretty easily. But what that also means is you're not able just to go to a store and play one. Which is kind of unfortunate, which is why videos like this are important. It's why I wanted to do a video on this guitar particularly, was you have to sort of live vicariously through somebody else who's playing one and you're watching a video. That's why I'm spending a great deal of time talking about playability. You might say, I just want to hear what it sounds like. I think describing how it feels to play it is important. All in all, I would just like to say that the playability on this guitar is outstanding, really for any price point, but especially considering the fact that this thing was under $400 shipped to my house. So if I were to talk about its tone compared to other guitars, I would say that like guitars of this shape, of this body style, it's balanced, and I would say it's sort of mid-focused, if you could hear that. If you would play this side by side, I would guess if you would get their whole range and play them side by side, the grand concert would probably be the most balanced sounding. I can't say that for sure because I haven't done it. Typically though, if you have a dreadnought style guitar, it's going to be sort of heavier in the low and low mids. These kinds of guitars are going to be a little more balanced across the board, which is nice because they'll sit in a mix really well. So this is Worship Tutorials. If you're a church player and you're playing in a band, you know, and your other guitar players are using extraordinary amounts of reverb and delay. That's what we do in the church world, in the modern praise and worship thing. You know, a guitar like this is going to sit nice in a pretty dense mix, whereas if you have like a dreadnought style guitar, whoever's running sound is probably going to pull a ton of low end out of that. So that's one of the reasons why I really like these smaller bodied acoustic guitars. It's because they're balanced. Now, compared to other nicer guitars that I have in the room, where I'd say the Orangewood falls short is like depth and really rich low end response and really smooth clarity on the top end. So it sounds really good. And if this was, you know, your only guitar and you didn't have like a $3,000 acoustic guitar sitting next to it to compare it to, this is why a comparison can be kind of a bad thing sometimes. You know, you would think this guitar sounds really good, and you've heard it in these samples. And by the way, I'm miking this guitar today with this Slate ML2. It's a modeling microphone, but this is a $150 microphone. I wanted to stay away from using like $1,000 microphone, you know, to capture a $400 guitar. You know, because if you're in a home recording situation and you have a guitar like this Slate ML2, this thing is awesome. It sounds really good and it's so affordable. So I wanted to give you an idea what it sounds like captured through this. And this is a very clean accurate sounding microphone, well, depending on the mic emulation you use. So what you're hearing in this video is what this thing, I'm trying to give you a representation how it sounds in the room using gear that's not like super high end as well. So like I was saying, mic rabbit hole aside, this thing it lacks the depth and the clarity, and especially not being harsh on the top end. Not that this sounds harsh on the top end, but it lacks what you might find if you step up even a couple $100. You're not going to get better playability if you step up to the $600–700 range, but you might find an instrument that sounds, you know, a little richer, a little more three-dimensional. Okay, so finally, I want to talk about what I consider the weakest point of this guitar, and that is the electronics. So this has a Fishman system in it. I really like how it's set up. So you can see that the controls here are sort of built into the guitar. So I found a random cable to plug into it. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. If you hold one of these buttons down, it turns this tuner on. There it is. So you've got a built-in tuner. You can see it's just a tiny bit flat. We'll fix that for the playing demos. But it's got a tuner built in. It's got volume, low and high controls here on this Fishman system. One thing I like is that the battery is accessible. You know, you can get in and out of it here. There's a preamp down here as well. That's what this big box is. And yeah, your output is right here, sort of on the bottom side. I know some people don't like this, especially because if you get a guitar and you want to change the pickup system, now you're stuck with like these controls and this big box down here. You know, if you wanted to put something else in here. But I don't think players are going to be swapping out electronics. I think what a player would do if they're ready to move on is probably invest in a higher end instrument with different electronics. So having said that, I just said that I like the way this is sort of set up and how it functions. I don't like the way it sounds. So it is a piezo system, which means there is a little thin pickup that sits underneath the saddle. If you take the saddle out, you'll see it. It's sitting there. And I am not a fan of piezo systems at all. In general, I think even the good ones sound bad. This one is not a particularly good sounding piezo system. I'm going to play it for you here in a bit, and I'm going to show you what you can do to sort of redeem it and make it sound better. But yeah, it's kind of thin and quacky and gross sounding. To me, it's the weakest link on this whole system. And if I were investing in this, what I would probably do, I think the version without electronics is $100 cheaper. If you really wanted this to be like your live guitar, or maybe you play a lot and you want a guitar to play on stage that's not like one of your you don't want to bring one of your really nice acoustics out for that, you might think about investing in the model without electronics or any of the Orangewood models and then put your own in. But, you know, you're going down this road. The electronics that I would suggest, my favorite, would be an LR Baggs Anthem system, which costs almost as much, or does cost as much as the version as this guitar does without electronics. So you're talking like the whole guitar costs the same as the pickup that you're going to put in it, which might be exactly what you want, because that is a great sounding pickup, and it would give you really good plugged in, you know, direct out tone with this guitar that plays really nice and feels really good. That might be the perfect solution for you if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, here's what it sounds like. And then what I'm gonna do is, we make acoustic guitar impulse responses here at Worship Tutorials. And this guitar actually is one of the guitars that I use as the input source for making those IRs. So if you get an IR pack, the PZ, I think it's, I can't remember, 1 or 2, I'll have to look at my notes, is this guitar. So what we do is we take reference recordings of really nice acoustic guitars, and then we take the output of lots of different guitars and match them to the reference and make an impulse response out of that. So you can apply it to the direct out of this guitar and it'll make it sound like one of these other nice mic'd guitars. I'm going to show you that. So first what you're going to hear is just this thing direct in without anything done to it. I probably run through a helix or something. That's what I always run my acoustic stuff through. And then I'm going to turn on the impulse response so you can get an idea of the kind of tone that you could get in a live situation if you did a little bit of, guitar impulse response magic to it. Check it out. A few notes in conclusion about this guitar. It does come with a gig bag. Here is the gig bag. It's not the worst gig bag I've ever seen by a long shot. Like, it's considering that it's included, it's pretty nice. The interior is pretty soft and there's a little bit of padding here. This thing is not going to protect your guitar like a mono bag would. But again, if you buy a mono bag for the bag itself is going to cost like 2/3 the amount of the guitar. So you got to keep in mind, I need to keep in mind just how affordable this guitar is and really the incredible value that you're getting. So you get a gig bag with it, and if you're just putting this in your car, taking it to and from church, for example, this thing is going to do just fine. I would not travel like on a plane with it. I wouldn't check this, on a plane if it were me. But this is a great addition, and of course it's got some pockets here. You can put things. Yeah, and this is just a nice touch. It has backpack type straps and a handle to carry it around with. The guitar also comes with a pick guard that you can put on it, which I probably will do because I prefer the look of a pick guard on a guitar, but I wanted to show it to you in this review without it, just so you can see how you get it straight out of the box. And one other thing about this, when I was changing the strings the first time, these bridge pins were like, they were shoved in there. I don't know if it's something about the two woods or the materials. I don't think these are not wood, these are plastic. I don't know if it's something about the materials that they were locked together, but I had to, especially on this low E, I had to take a pair of pliers and yank it out of there. And my thought the whole time was like, if a person is a beginner or just starting out and somebody, they watched a video about how to change strings and they're going to try and change their own strings and they can't, like, that would be a frustrating experience. So I had to get up, I had to get my hand underneath here and push it up from the bottom and then take pliers and pull it out. And in fact, this bridge pin is kind of all scratched up right here because I was really, I had to really pull on that thing to get it out of there. So I don't know if that's a common thing with these Orangewood guitars. That can happen on guitars though, just saying, these things can get sort of stuck in there, but that was probably one of the most stuck bridge pins that I've experienced. And I've changed the strings a couple times because I've been playing this thing, and I've noticed that they can kind of get, get wedged in there pretty good. Yeah, so just a minor little note. If you get one of these and you experience that too, if you break a bridge pin, it's not that big a deal. They're really, really cheap. You can just buy a replacement set, but you do have to get it out of there somehow. So that aside, I really think Orangewood has done a fantastic job with these guitars. Like I said, they have a whole line of guitars linked below. If you have any questions about Orangewood guitars, let me know in the comments, or if you have one, let me know what you've got what you like about it. If you don't like things about it, let us know. But all I've seen is a ton of love for these guitars, and it's really easy to understand why. Another thing that you can think about with these guitars is they have some really cool, unique models, like the Oliver, for example. I believe is an all mahogany sort of construction, you know, tiny little bodied acoustic guitar. A really unique sound and playing experience on a guitar like that. You know, and if you want to add something like that to your collection of guitars, you can do it without, I think that guitar is like $195. So you can do it really affordably, and if it's anything like this, you'll know that it's going to play fantastic right out of the gate. You won't even have to do anything, just strum it. I think this thing was pretty much in tune when I took it out of the case too. So, hey, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment below if you have a question or if you have one of these yourself. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.